What up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode. So this week, there's supposed to be four of us. We're missing two of them. So it's just Landon and I. We're going to chop up again chapter 2 of this book we're reading. If you guys were with us last time, if not, it's Why Do I Do... Hold on. There you go. Why Do I Do What I Don't Want to Do? Just about replacing deadly vices with healthy habits and understanding, why do we do the things that we know we shouldn't be doing. So this week we're talking about chapter 2. It's titled Anger and Forgiveness. Landon and I are literally just chopping it up, talking about what was impactful for us. And I wanted to share it via podcast with you guys. So hopefully you guys can get something out of it. And maybe you'll go read it if you'd like. So with that, do you want to kick us off, Landon?
Yeah. This chapter was definitely convicting as I think about anger and forgiveness. I think especially for guys, anger is pretty prevalent. I think of things that make us angry, and even as this book kind of hit on of how do you get to the root of why you're angry, and even the concept of hurt people, and so as we're hurt, we in turn naturally hurt other people because of something else deeper going on in our lives, and so I think that's so true. Even if I have a bad day or a hard day or someone else hurts me, I come home to my wife, to Betsy, and I respond in a negative way, or even should I say react in a negative way to something maybe she says, because I've been hurt that day, or I've been wronged by someone, and so I think even that whole concept was really helpful for me to kind of unravel and hopefully continue to unpack myself and my marriage for sure.
Yeah. I've something I've realized about myself. And this will just be me just sharing my crappiness with everyone. Is like when I get mad, I tend to take it out on the world around me. It completely comes from a prideful place, but prideful on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's like self-pity. There's prideful where it's like you puff yourself up.
Yeah.
There's prideful where there's like self-pity, and you want the whole world to feel bad for you, so you like make it known that you're upset, and you take it out on people, and it's just completely, it comes from pride. And that's something I've had to really work on, of like not being frustrated or angry towards someone and still being kind and gentle.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, what's the first part you want to talk about in this?
Yeah, you were saying the part about leaving it at the altar. Talk
Dude.
about that. Yeah, what was so helpful with that?
Dude, so, okay. And again, just sharing my life with people, like this past year, like between my ex and I won't mention her name just because of the podcast, but between my ex and I, we've just been like so at each other's throat as we've been separated and just trying to navigate this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, every month we do the whole like eat the bread, take the cup. What's it called again? Why am I blanking?
Communion.
Yes, communion. I don't know why I was blanking on that. But we take communion every month.
Yeah.
And I've skipped it this entire year. Every year, every month when it comes around, I haven't done it. And I've not done it because like I haven't sought forgiveness from her for just how mad I've been at her, look the things I thought about her, whatever. And then over Christmas, it wasn't good between my family and I. And so I had to like seek forgiveness there. And again, when I read this, it was like, I got crap going on with my ex, crap going on with my family. It's like, man, I'm going to have to like really like go to them and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I actually did. Except for my brother. I still got to talk to him. Mm. But when I read that, man, I was like, dude, it's been a year. I might need to do something.
Yeah. It's so challenging. I think about forgiveness, even in this chapter where it's talking about carrying around bitterness all of our lives, and the baggage and the weight of that, and you think about people who are bitter. I think about even times that I've been bitter. It's pretty miserable. I don't know if you feel that way. It feels miserable because you're carrying something that you're not meant to, and so I think that as I think about bitterness, it can be so frustrating because you want to put on like, and life is good. It's, I've had a good day. And yet in the back of your mind, there's this kind of nagging, lingering thoughts of hate and frustration and anger towards a person that I haven't let go. And, even, as it talks about in here, so many passages in scripture talking about how Jesus has forgiven us, therefore we're able to extend forgiveness to other people. You hear that often, and it kind of just, one ear out the other. Okay, we're supposed to forgive. But I think about even, I think in Matthew 6, it was talking about that, forgive lest your Father in heaven forgive you. And so even the whole, concept there of if you don't forgive, it seems to me, my interpretation, that um, God isn't going to forgive you. And I'm like, well, shoot, I want to be forgiven because I know I've sinned against a holy God. And even, I was talking about here, you haven't just sinned against a person, you've sinned against a holy God, not just that person that you've, communicated poorly with, but a holy God who hates sin. He hates anger, and also he hates bitterness. Like he hates that we don't show. Obviously he doesn't hate us in that, but he hates that we're not extending forgiveness because he's like, wait, I've actually forgiven you so graciously, by my mercy and nothing that you've done, but just willingly extending grace. So I think as I read that, I was like, man, if there's anything in my heart I need to forgive, or you can go to that person and, he said, say that I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? Not
Yeah.
just I'm sorry, slap you on the face again, but I'm sorry for this. Will you please forgive me? And take responsibility, even if it is 1% your fault. It might be 99% their fault, but if you ask for forgiveness for the 1% that you did, I think that was the thing that stood out to me most of have I taken responsibility of the 1 to 10% of what I did to hurt that person or respond poorly to that person,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to own that and seek forgiveness, and then obviously hope that they do the same, on their part.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy that he used the example of a young man who was abused by his dad,
Hmm.
and the kid went to the counselor, and the counselor, listened and talked, and then said, "Hey, like, is there anything you need to apologize to him for?" Which is like crazy to say. I read that and was like, I mean, and even the author JP was like, "All right, that might have been a little bit, could have been said a little differently,"
Yeah,
but it brought up a good point of like, even if you have 1%, like the thoughts he had toward his dad afterwards, like that's sinful. It's a sinful response, even though it might be quote unquote justified. It's like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then he went and he sought reconciliation, and him and his dad figured it out, and he cried to him and felt sorry. But like, yeah, owning 1% is
Yeah,
hard. I mean, that's really hard.
so challenging. Man, I think about how much Satan loves to kind of get in relationships. I think even specifically Christian relationships, right? Even think about the church. Like the devil wants to destroy the church. He wants to cause disunity. You think about the Father, or even Jesus in the high priestly prayer, in I think it's John 17, where he's praying. And one of the prayers he's praying to the Father is that he would be one, that we would be one as he and the Father are one. So I think about he's praying for us to be one. He's praying for us to be unified. And so in relationships, the devil wants to cause disunity, to break up the church, to obviously cause hurt and bitterness, so that the church and people of God will divide. And I think about that so much with bitterness, man. If we let that fester and go on, even just for you, man, I would encourage you, to seek forgiveness in these areas so that you're able to take, communion, and rightly take it in repentance and respond in faith, trusting in the blood of the cross that you've been forgiven and that you should extend forgiveness to other people. That's challenging, obviously not easy, but it's commanded. And so I think as believers, we should always seek that, no matter how hard it is.
Yeah, one thing that helps me too when I think about that stuff, maybe it'd be helpful for someone out there, is like, if I'm going to genuinely commit to being like the best version of myself, right? And then like that's something I'm really seeking, being smarter, healthier, more financially stable, like all the things, right? Then you kind of almost, at least for me, it's like figuring out how to detach from the result of me saying sorry to someone. Like, I want them to forgive me and I want everything to feel peachy and whatever, and it just might not.
Yeah.
It might not feel like anything. It might just be like words coming out of my mouth and I'd have to force it. But if I just do the action and nothing else happens, at least I did the action and that helps me grow as a person.
Yeah.
So like you can almost, maybe it's selfish, but like you can attach that goal to it of like, I'm going to do this because I want to be a better person. So I'm going to go say sorry and they might not forgive me and nothing might change, but I'm going to do it because it's hard, it's challenging, and I want to grow. And for me, that was a huge part of the motivation. And I don't know if that's wrong or right, but it was a big piece of the motivation.
Yeah, for sure. I think within that, you know, as you seek forgiveness, you're praying for not only your heart and also their heart as they respond. But I think that prayer is so much attached to that. If we go into it just as an action, detach from, the Father, even in prayer, I'm praying, God, use your Spirit, help me to be meek and gentle and kind in my, in my response, in how I respond to them, and also how I seek forgiveness and ask, for forgiveness and say I'm sorry. I think about, prayer being so much attached to that I would, in humility, uh, go to them well, with a right heart posture, not just an action to get it done, to check it off. I think that's good. What you're saying, I think that's actually absolutely right. But I think it's an and, God, I'm praying for my heart. I'm praying for my heart. I'm praying for their heart. I think that's so key to how we ask for forgiveness, how we go about it. And then after you do it, you're continuing to pray for them and also yourself to truly let go of that. He even said it here. It's really difficult. He was saying, it's not like you're going to always forget. You're not going to forgive and forget. That's kind of impossible as humans.
Yeah.
But you're still called to forgive and, even leave the rest up to God in the sense of how you both move forward. And maybe you're not on great speaking terms and best friends in the future. Maybe it should be like that. Maybe it could be like that one day, but it's not always going to be like that. It also takes time to heal. So I think about, we're not like God. Like even in Scripture, it talks about, in Hebrews, he's basically quoting the Old Testament. He says, God says, I will remember your sins no more. So it's like, I don't think that we as humans can really not remember what someone else did. I think that's impossible for us to forget, but forgiveness is a command for us.
Yeah, dude, 1,000%. What's something else that you want to chat about from this chapter?
Yeah, I think where he says 53, but we can choose to view each conflict as an opportunity to be sanctified, to glorify God, to grow as a Christian, to heal a relationship. Basically, see these problems as opportunities. And I was like, oh wow, I don't often always see them as opportunities to grow, to become more like Christ, to be sanctified. Even thinking about conflict in marriage, that's an opportunity for my marriage to grow stronger and for me to grow closer to my wife. I think about, even marriage is one of the hardest things that I've ever done, and also the most rewarding and joyful. And even as we're about to have a newborn, a baby, that's going to be most joyful, and yet I hear very hard, right? Very challenging. All about that. So, the rewards far outweigh how hard it is. It makes it so much more worth it. But I think about how often as a guy, I have to ask for forgiveness and say that I'm sorry because I'm an idiot and I, misspoke and I'm not slow to speak. And so I think for me, that's been a huge challenge in marriage for me, and just something God's really grown me in. I feel like last year I was constantly reading the Proverbs about, the fool that speaks too much and speaks too quickly, and how, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and all these passages that I'm reading, and I'm like, man, just right here, every day that I'm reading them because I need it. So that part was really helpful for me, even just to see this as an opportunity for me to ask, say I'm sorry, ask for forgiveness, and then continue to grow and to move forward, and to even pray that I would do better, by the Spirit, that I would walk by the Spirit and display the fruit of the Spirit. Um, so that part was really helpful for me, just opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, that would hit part too. I was listening to I forget where I was when I heard this, but essentially marriage, like God sanctifies us through a multitude of things, but one of the biggest ones is relationships, right?
Hmm.
And how we interact. And the biggest relationship is marriage.
Yeah,
And like the point of marriage, this is what told to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, but what was told to me is like the point of marriage isn't to be in love, isn't to have kids, isn't the point of marriage actually from a biblical standpoint is to make you more like Jesus, because there will be conflict and there will be struggle and there will be tension, but that tension is opportunity, like you just alluded to become more like Jesus.
yeah,
And that is completely opposite of what the world looks at as marriage. Like you
yeah,
want to find your special someone and you want to like travel the world and have all these yada yada, and like that's great,
yeah,
not the point. And so, like, when you argue or you're having trouble, it doesn't mean anything's wrong. Or it doesn't
yeah,
necessarily mean anything's wrong. It just
totally.
means that that's a part of it. And you have to learn how to grow through it. Which is
Yeah,
totally like, okay, so you're saying I don't need a new person? It's like, I
yeah,
need to change?
yeah, for
Oh,
sure. Yeah,
okay.
because it's like, well, if I need, I mean, I'm going to need a new person every time because I'm going to continuously hurt someone. So I'm going to need someone better every time. It's like, well, good luck finding that perfect human. They're not there. I think about, I mean, yeah, definitely marriage is one of the more sanctifying, if not the most sanctifying thing that you'll ever, um, go through in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And, um, the saying of, when you get married, you learn to die to yourself. You learn to die daily. The concept that, Jesus talks about of picking up your cross daily and following me. And then I've heard, then you have kids and then you just die. Like, it's like that concept. That was really even just funny, kind of laughable for me because I was like, okay, I'm learning how to die to self. I'm learning how to die. And then you have kids. You're like, you just learn to die. You just basically, you just die because it's like it's so hard. But I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, back to your point, I think seeing the point of marriage, remembering the why. Uh, these situations, this relationship is meant to make me more like Christ. The cliche passage that we talk about often. That's iron sharpens iron, but it like man, this is so true. That's not just some one off. Like that, iron does sharpen iron, and so we sharpen each other in so many good ways, and yet we can see them as well, that relationship rubbed me the wrong way. I'm just going to move on. And then, you go hurt someone else or they hurt you. And it's a cycle. It's like a domino effect. You think about, if you don't have that in mind, the why marriage, even think about, the covenant between God and us as believers. He's called us. He's made a covenant with us. He's going to keep his covenant. He's going to keep his promise. That is marriage. Like I am making a covenant with my wife to till death do us part, through thick and thin, through good and bad. I'm going to pursue her and love her and choose her in the good and the bad and the hard. And man, that is difficult. But the same goes. God does the same for us, and that's the picture, image of marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, I'll speak for myself. I think it's been really hard over the years to really understand what in sickness and health, through good
Mm.
times and bad times, like really means.
Yeah,
Because when you get married in a blissful state. You get married when things are perfect, or quote, for the most part, like when things are
yeah,
like quote
yeah,
unquote perfect.
yeah,
You don't you don't really think about like, what about when we're 75 and she gets dementia and I'm healthy? It's like, well, you got to take care of her, dude. Like you don't
mm,
think about that because it's how many years away, but like, oh, and then all the seasons that come within it. Like, what if you let yourself go? She's got to love you through letting yourself go and then finding yourself and getting back, or vice versa, or
yeah.
whatever. Like, you don't really think about that, but that's what you're committing to.
Mhm.
That's hard.
Yeah, yeah, I saw it so well with my dad, how he extended love to my mom, and obviously my mom loving my dad. But it was different, when she was sick with cancer, and she was fully paralyzed. The tumor in her neck had metastasized through her spine, and it made her, essentially fully paralyzed. I saw my dad extend a love, and to see the covenant, to see his pursuit of her in the midst of hardship, in the midst of, man, my dad retired a few years before that to travel the world with my mom, and to enjoy the time together, just them two, that they had before they had kids. To see him continue to pursue her and love her and care for her, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, I think just an incredible picture of Jesus and his care for us, and pursuit. I think it was a huge, huge, example for me as I think about, man, till death do us part. I'm going to love my wife no matter what, because hard is going to come. It's not a matter of if, but when. I say that often, but when you're going to go through more hard things, how are you going to respond? And I think, man, my dad was prepared to respond well, and to show the love of Christ, and even when it was brutally, brutally difficult.
And that's it's really cool. Well, dude, let's it's 7:55. I do got to get rolling. I think you do too.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Let's wrap this thing up. That was chapter 2, just dealing with anger and frustration. And it always seems like when we talk about anger and frustration, it just comes back to dealing with yourself. Just understanding yourself more and learning how to respond better. Like it always comes back to that.
Yeah. I mean, even how he closed, talking about us being peacemakers as Christians, called to be peacemakers, thinking about the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be children of God. I think about that was something that, is going to stick with me. Took it, would I be a peacemaker today? Go and be a peacemaker. So that's a challenge, obviously, for us. But man, I'm praying that for myself, for you, that we'd be men of peace, that we'd be people who seek peace and seek forgiveness and display love, even when it's difficult. That we would choose that.
100%. All right, you guys. Landon, I'm glad we did this, man. I'll see you next Tuesday. And for those of you out there listening or watching, hopefully this was helpful. Again, if you want to read this book, I can't figure out where to put it. There it is. If you want to read the book, I would recommend go read the book. It's really great. It's very easy to read, and it's very practical, all the things. So, love you guys. Love you, Lando. And,
yeah, man.
you guys
Enjoyed it. Love you, bro.